As the center court crowd erupted for Eala, it seemed like instant regret washed over Paolini, but the reality wasn't quite that simple.
To thank everybody who is here.
It is one of those stories that sounds bigger in the headline than it was in reality. The truth is more unusual and far more interesting. If you had been sitting high above center court on the afternoon of July 6, 2026, you probably noticed it before either player struck a ball. The seats were their familiar dark green. The temperature hovered around 31 degrees Celsius. As the two players emerged from the tunnel, something subtle happened. The applause leaned. Not dramatically. Wimbledon crowds rarely do anything dramatically. Instead, it shifted by the smallest measurable amount. The applause for 21-year-old Eala arrived a fraction of a second sooner. It lingered just a fraction longer than the applause for Jasmine Paolini, the Italian who had reached the Wimbledon final on this very court only 2 years earlier. Eala noticed. Paolini noticed. Everyone inside center court noticed. By the time the afternoon ended 2 hours and 22 minutes later, the scoreboard would tell one story. The atmosphere inside the stadium would tell another. To understand why center court reacted that way, you have to rewind just 48 hours. On July 4th, Eala walked onto the same court as the tournament's number 29 seed, ranked just inside the world's top 30, and stunned defending Wimbledon champion Iga Swiatek 7-6. 11-9, 6-2. The victory was historic. According to official WTA records, Eala became the first player from the Philippines in the Open era to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam singles event. The reaction extended far beyond London. By Monday morning, Wimbledon's official highlight video of Eala's upset had surpassed 1.2 million views, outperforming several other marquee highlights from the tournament. Around the tennis world, people who had barely known her name a week earlier suddenly wanted to know everything about her. That mattered. Because the crowd arriving for her round of 16 match against Jasmine Paolini wasn't meeting a stranger anymore. They were meeting the tournament's breakout story. This is also where the narrative deserves to stay accurate. Paolini did not lose this match. She won it. She defeated Eala 6-4, 4-6, 6-3 to reach another Grand Slam quarterfinal. Afterward, she thanked Roger Federer, who was watching from the royal box, and described joy as her greatest strength. There is no evidence that she complained about the crowd. There is no interview where she regretted center court supporting Eala. There is no quote expressing bitterness. The real story is much more compelling. Before the match even began, Paolini acknowledged in a Tennis Channel interview that she expected the Wimbledon crowd to support Eala. She recognized it before anyone hit a serve. She accepted it. And then she walked into it anyway. That changes the story entirely. This wasn't a popular player suddenly abandoned by her own fans. It was center court deciding, for one afternoon, to adopt someone new. Both players knew it before the opening point. The Guardian described Eala as winning hearts and minds. Yahoo Sports called the atmosphere partisan, noting that it was unusual considering Paolini's own popularity at Wimbledon. That single word, unusual, captures everything. Because Paolini is not an unpopular champion. Quite the opposite. During her remarkable run to the 2024 Wimbledon final, center court embraced her infectious personality, fearless tennis, and unmistakable smile. Wimbledon crowds had already built a connection with her. She had earned that affection. Yet for one afternoon in July 2026, it wasn't enough. A 21-year-old Filipina who had never won a WTA singles title had become the emotional center of the tournament. That is the anomaly. That is the story. As the match unfolded, the crowd stayed with Eala through every swing of momentum. They cheered when she escaped a tense opening service game. They encouraged her as her first serve struggled to find rhythm. They remained invested after she dropped the opening set. Then came the second. Facing early pressure, Eala saved break points, broke Paolini herself, and suddenly center court came alive. The Guardian's match report captured the moment perfectly. Loud cheers of "Let's go Alex" echoed around center court. That wasn't simply support. It was recognition. It was the moment thousands of spectators collectively realized they wanted this remarkable run to continue. And that is significant because Wimbledon crowds do not hand out that kind of affection easily. Emma Raducanu didn't receive it until she had already become a major story. Coco Gauff wasn't embraced this completely during her first Wimbledon breakthrough. Even Paolini herself had to reach the latter stages of the tournament before center court truly adopted her. Eala earned that emotional investment in the round of 16. She was the number 29 seed. World number 32. No WTA singles titles. Yet center court treated her like one of its own. The numbers help explain why it wasn't simply emotion. Start with the digital audience. Wimbledon's official highlight package of Eala's victory over Swiatek raced past 1.2 million views within days, becoming one of the tournament's. The excitement inside the stadium wasn't creating the phenomenon. It was confirming one that had already spread across the tennis world. Then compare the resumes. Eala entered Wimbledon ranked number 32, with career prize money under $1 million and without a WTA singles championship. Paolini arrived as an established Grand Slam finalist with years of experience on the sport's biggest stages. By every conventional measure, Paolini was the bigger name. Yet for one afternoon, the audience chose someone else. Not because Paolini failed to inspire them. Because Eala had become impossible to ignore. There was another layer to the matchup as well. Earlier in 2026, the two had met in Dubai, where Eala defeated Paolini 6-1, 7-6-5. Paolini already understood how dangerous this opponent could be. Now she had to face that same opponent with center court openly cheering from the opposite side. She still found a way to win. That deserves as much credit as Eala's breakthrough itself. The second set became the emotional peak of the afternoon. Eala survived 3 break points, broke serve herself, and forced a deciding set. After nearly 90 minutes, the point totals were almost identical. The Guardian noted that Paolini had 169 points. Eala had 168. 1 point separated them. That explains why the stadium erupted. When the match headed to a third set, the roar wasn't simply for another hour of tennis. It was the sound of thousands of spectators realizing they had chosen a favorite. Most of those fans had purchased tickets months before the draw was even announced. Few had come specifically to watch Eala. Yet tennis crowds have a remarkable habit. Sometimes they simply decide. They watch someone exceed every expectation, and somewhere during the afternoon they emotionally adopt them. That is exactly what happened. Paolini had predicted the crowd would support Eala. What she could not have known was just how overwhelming that support would become. Then reality returned. Because grass courts reward execution more than emotion. At 4-3 in the deciding set, Eala's level dipped just enough. Successive errors handed Paolini the crucial break. Eala's first serve speed dropped noticeably during the closing games, reflecting the physical toll of a long afternoon. Paolini sensed the opening. Her serving became increasingly dominant, winning an overwhelming percentage of first serve points in the final set. She held. She held again. Then she served out the match after 2 hours and 22 minutes. Roger Federer applauded from the royal box. Moments later, Paolini smiled and admitted she had been trying not to think about her childhood idol watching every point. The post-match interviews reveal why the crowd regret narrative never truly fits. Paolini never criticized the spectators. Instead, she reflected on perseverance. It was really tough. A roller coaster, she said. There were difficult moments, but I kept working with my team supporting me. I love what I do, and I have to enjoy it. That's my superpower. Those are not the words of a player frustrated by the crowd. They are the words of someone who understands one of Wimbledon's oldest unwritten rules. Center court does not belong to any player. Every now and then, for reasons no algorithm can predict and no ranking can explain, it simply falls in love with someone new. For one unforgettable afternoon in July 2026, that someone was Eala. vidIQ. What happened after the match may have revealed even more than what happened during it. In her post-match press conference, Eala never searched for excuses. She never blamed the conditions, the crowd, or the moment. Instead, she spoke with the kind of perspective that usually belongs to players who have spent a decade on tour. Her message was simple. Never say die and play every point like your life depends on it. Then came the inevitable question about her serve, which had deserted her during crucial stretches of the match. Eala answered with remarkable honesty. My serve was not as good as maybe other matches, but I have days like that. Everyone has days where they don't play their best. I understand that's part of the job. I don't think I'm going to be playing the best tennis of my life every single day. I don't expect that. She is only 21 years old. Those are not the words of someone overwhelmed by disappointment. Those are the words of a professional who already understands that consistency is built over years, not afternoons. But perhaps the most revealing moment came when she reflected on the match itself. Of course, there are things I would have liked to do differently, but in the end, that's just tennis. That's also what's beautiful about tennis. That single sentence explains why center court had embraced her. Crowds respond to courage. They respond to honesty. And perhaps most of all, they respond to composure. When a player can lose the biggest match of her career and still speak about what she loves rather than what she lost, people notice. That is the kind of grace audiences remember long after the score has faded. Now step back from center court for a moment, because the scale of Eala's achievement deserves to be stated precisely. According to the BBC, she became the first player from the Philippines to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam singles tournament in the Open era. Not the first in Southeast Asia. Not the first in modern Philippine tennis. The first Filipino, period. The Open era began in 1968. That means nearly 6 decades of professional tennis history passed before a Filipino player reached this stage of a major championship. That is not simply a personal milestone. It is a national one. The impact was immediate. The Guardian reported that Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. publicly congratulated Eala following her historic victory over Iga Swiatek. Across the Philippines, watch parties were organized as fans gathered to follow her match against Jasmine Paolini. Yet the story had already grown beyond national pride. By Monday morning, Wimbledon's official highlight package of Eala's upset had surpassed 1.2 million views, becoming one of the tournament's biggest digital stories. The audience was no longer limited to Filipino supporters. It had become a global tennis story. Even months earlier, after Eala defeated Paolini in Dubai, fans on Reddit/tennis had begun discussing her potential. One commenter wrote, "Once it grows, it cannot be stopped." That is, of course, fan opinion rather than evidence. But it captured the feeling surrounding her rise. Momentum had begun building long before Wimbledon. At the same time, honesty requires acknowledging why Eala ultimately lost this match. It was not because the crowd stopped believing. It was not because the pressure became too much. It was because one part of her game broke down at the worst possible time. Her first serve disappeared. The Guardian described a difficult sequence early in the match when Eala struck one first serve into the bottom of the net before following it with a long second serve. That wasn't symbolic. It wasn't psychological theater. It was simply a mechanical lapse against one of the world's best grass court players. Throughout the 2026 season, the serve had remained the area of her game most frequently identified for improvement. Against a former Wimbledon finalist on center court, those margins become decisive. Eala never argued otherwise. She reported no injury. She offered no excuses. She accepted responsibility, exactly as elite athletes do. Now the calendar shifts. The North American hardcourt season comes next. First comes the Canadian Open, followed by Cincinnati, and then the US Open. Those tournaments matter because hard courts reward Eala's game differently than grass. Her aggressive baseline tennis, movement, and ability to redirect pace have already produced outstanding results on the surface. The evidence is there. In 2025, she reached the Miami Open semifinals, defeating Iga Swiatek along the way before announcing herself to the wider tennis world. Hard courts have already shown what her highest level can look like. So what should we actually take away from that afternoon on center court once all the headlines are stripped away? Simply this. The crowd made a choice. And it was a genuine one. Jasmine Paolini still won the match because she executed better in the moments that mattered most. She earned every game she won. Nothing about the crowd changes that. The head-to-head between these two players now stands level at 1 victory each. There is no rivalry running away from either side. Only two outstanding competitors separated by a handful of points over 2 matches. For Eala, though, something equally important happened. The next time she walks onto center court, she will not arrive as an unknown prospect. She will arrive as a player who has already beaten a defending Wimbledon champion there. A player who has already earned the crowd's respect there. A player who already knows what that stage feels like. As she left the court, the Guardian noted one final image. Eala turned toward the crowd and formed a heart with her hands. No trophy. No celebration. Just a simple gesture of gratitude toward the people who had spent 2 hours believing in her. Perhaps that is the image worth remembering most. Not because it changed the result, but because it captured what the afternoon had become. A stadium thanking a young player, and a young player thanking the stadium back. That is the honest story of July 6, 2026. Not that Jasmine Paolini regretted the crowd. Not that one era ended and another began. Not that a symbolic torch had been passed. Simply that a player who had been ranked outside the world's top 100 not long before walked onto the most famous tennis court in the world twice in 3 days and made center court choose her. She lost the second match. She still made history. The story now moves to North America. First Canada, then Cincinnati, then the US Open. If center court saw something special before the rest of the tennis world fully caught up, the hard-court swing will tell us. It will reveal whether Wimbledon was early or exactly on time. If the last 2 hours and 22 minutes taught us anything, it is that Eala's story is only beginning. And the next chapter may be even more compelling than the first. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.